You know, today's families often feel anxious and frustrated by the overwhelming chaos of society. How can we as parents bring order to our family? Today's guest may have a few answers for us. Joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina is Conor Gallagher. He and his wife Ashley are parents to 16 children. That's right, that's not a typo, 16 kids. Conor also runs several businesses, and he's the executive director of the Benedict Leadership Institute at Belmont Abbey College. He's also author of Well-Ordered Family. Conor, you are a very busy guy. Good to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think I'm only busy when I'm doing my own will. But if I'm doing what God wants me to do, He makes time for everything I need to get done. So that's how I like to talk about busyness.
Now, you and your wife have 16 kids. I mean, I've got two kids. That was more than enough for my wife and myself. I mean, 16, that's more than a baseball team. Were they all natural birth? Do you have any foster kids? Some were adopted?
All biological and one set of twins. So my oldest is 22, and then my youngest is 3 weeks old. We had little Monica 3 weeks ago, and actually,
Wow.
a little gray hair here somewhere there shows that I am now a grandfather. So my daughter, my 21-year-old, had a baby 3 months ago, and my son is having a baby in like a week or two. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, my wife and I, it wasn't so weird for me to be a granddad, but looking at my beautiful young wife as it's weird that you're a grandma. That's the weird thing, even more so than having 16 kids for me. So
When your child having a child and you've got a 3 week old, so that 3 week old will be an uncle or aunt, like to,
that's right. That's right. Little Aunt Monica was born Aunt Monica.
well,
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
that's amazing. Now, let me ask you something, Conor. In today's society, today's economy, how can you simply afford to raise 16 kids?
Well, there's the old saying cheaper by a dozen, by the dozen, but the reality is that you have to take each child individually and assess before you have another what's God's plan here, so psychologically, emotionally, physically, financially, those are questions that you have to ask before you have more kids. And so we've always asked that one kid at a time. We never had a goal to have a certain amount of kids, but in terms of the money, there's a lot of misconceptions how out there. There's been some like really horrific reports that I have serious problems with about how much it costs to raise kids in today's world. And I think that's coming from a very kind of globalist, far leaning left agenda saying you can't afford kids because it costs so much to raise them. And I just know that that's just false on so many levels. Yeah, kids are expensive. I'm not saying they're not, but the typical family can make some sacrifices, can live a life more conducive to a larger family, and they make it work. I just know too many people living off a household income of even 60, 70, $80,000 and having multiple kids. We've been very blessed financially. I've been successful at business. So I'm not trying to say that we've had to be that simple. I used to have to be that simple before my businesses took off, but never, I shouldn't say never, very rarely is money itself in our very abundant world and lifestyle the legitimate excuse to not have more children. I think there's a lot of other reasons that somebody might have to slow down, but I haven't met too many people who are just too dirt poor to have another child made in the image and likeness of God.
Hey, but wait till all those kids want to go to college or university. Then you'll see how expensive it can be.
It can be. I got a few that have been through already. I get an idea of it. Yeah.
Are you guys planning on having more children or 16 the cutoff point?
No, there's no cutoff point. We'll just see what's in store for my wife and God's plan, and so we take it again one at a time. So right now we try to be the best we can for 16, just like we tried to be the best for one. Who knows? If we have another one, I'll come back on the show in a couple of years and tell you about it.
Now, what are some of the other challenges, Conor, when raising that many children? Do you find that maybe some of the older kids are helping to raise some of the younger kids?
Oh yeah. So all my analogies in this new business I have, Wilder Family, is about how to apply business principles to family life. So I like to call my teenagers mid-level management. So first of all, you don't raise 16 kids. Again, four of my kids have grown and gone. I mean, they're in college or they're out of college, having their own families. So you don't actually have to fit 16 kids into a car. It's not like that. But the challenges are whether it's 16 or two or one even. I think the challenges are in today's world managing the stress and anxiety. There is way too many expectations on a modern parent because they think, well, the kids have to play every sport. They have to be musicians. They have to be on the honor roll. Mom and dad have to work out and be in great shape, and all of these things. And everybody has to have the right cars, the right clothes, the right vacation. That's overwhelming, but that's keeping up with the Joneses. That's a cultural phenomenon. And one of my missions, Hal, is to help families show no, you are the architect of your family. Mom and dad, you have to be visionaries of your family, just like you have visionaries or a CEO at business. You have to decide what are the ultimate goals? What's the culture our family's going to grow up in? What is the environment that we're going to construct, like the architect, to build our community the way we want it? And that means making decisions to cut things away and to embrace other things. So the challenge for me is, as every other viewer you have here, constructing your environment so the stress and anxiety of the modern world does not control you, but you control your environment because your kids deserve it.
So, how do you really maintain order in your household, Connor, and still find time for you and Ashley?
That's a great question. So yeah, Ashley and I, number one, that's first. Right? God's first, spouse is second, kids are third. And I think you have to keep that priority in line. And when I put my wife first, then my kids benefit from it tremendously. But we have to have just like in business, how to really stay on the same page, you have to first know what your vision is. What is your mission statement at work? What's your vision statement at work? So I help people craft their vision statement or their mission statement for their family. We choose core values. We choose a number of different business tools like strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. And so we're able to look and say, we agree, Ashley and I, on the big picture goals. Like we know where we're trying to go, just like my executive team here knows where it's trying to go in the business. So when conflict and stress arises, we're able to double down and say, we know where we're going. So we're going to get through this little shortcoming or this little difficulty together as a united team. And so all of my kids and my wife were one big team doing it. And I create tools to help people do that. So the little things don't throw you off track too much.
Now, in your book, Connor, you write about 4 types of family gatherings. Can you explain what these involve and why you see them as so important?
Absolutely. So, the greatest business mind of our time is a guy named Jim Collins, and he wrote probably the best selling book of all time called Good to Great. And he said something beautiful. He said, successful companies is 1% vision, 99% alignment around the vision. So meetings, family meetings are all about staying on the same page. So people say, how do you stay on the same page? I say, well, first, literally have a page, have a piece of paper. And so we have a meeting cadence. So number one, my family has a weekly meeting. I call it a huddle, just like a football team gets together and has a quick huddle. We have a weekly huddle on Sunday nights, just logistics. It's the only time how you'll hear me tell all my kids, get your cell phones out. I want to see everybody with their cell phones because we're looking at calendars. We're looking at what do you have this week, what practices, what social events. So that stays on the same page, a little prayers mixed in there. And I have an agenda that's 10 minutes long that help you knock this out real quick. So that's a weekly agenda to just make sure that you're all on the same page. In that meeting, how we also talk about what are the upcoming stressors, mom, dad, what are these things this week that might be stressing you out? What are you afraid of? And also, what are the opportunities, these things that we can reach out and grab? So that's an example of how it's logistical, but it's also a spiritual or psychological meeting. And you knock it out real quick so it's not over the top and no one resents it, or it's not time for discipline. It's just a logistical meeting. But I also have a quarterly meeting, an annual meeting, and I also have a meeting that's just for mom and dad, where it's a real heart to heart, it's a really emotional meeting. And I have agendas for these to just kind of make it easy for you to follow. And it feels a little corny sometimes having an agenda for your family meeting, but actually it desensitizes you from the weirdness and it helps you embrace it and you just follow the agenda and it makes it so much smoother. We need good meetings, whether we're in athletics, we call that practice. We need good meetings at business. We need good meetings in the family because we're a group of people trying to accomplish a goal together.
It's funny, circling back to the football reference and the huddling there, I'm just picturing that you've got enough kids to form a football team, so offense and defense, and that's what's great about it. Connor, in today's crazy society, how can parents really safeguard their children while also nurturing their spiritual growth and enabling to do what's right even while facing peer pressure?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I would say how that the biggest, most obvious threat, I would say, we have urgent threats like, oh, the kid's running out into the road. That's an urgent threat. But you also have important threats like, long-term chastity or purity or whatever like that. But there's an urgent threat and an important threat that are attacking the family right now, especially kids, and it's these darn cell phones. It's the media, it's the digital life, video games, social media, everything like that. So what I tell parents is I created a tool called the Digital Policy Builder. And what I have found, Hal, is that parents, of course, want to protect their children from the internet, from the negative influences out there. And I'm not saying the internet's bad. It's not. We're on it right now. Thank God for this, or else I wouldn't be here. But what I'm saying is you have to be absolutely perfectly clear with your kid what the expectations and rules are. Most conflict with especially teenagers does not come from the teenager disagreeing with mom or dad about the rules are. It actually comes from a misunderstanding of what the rule is precisely. And I could give many examples of that some other time, but what kids need is very precise rules. And I think it helps if mom and dad write down those rules on this digital policy that I have, because then it says who can you communicate with, when can you communicate with them, on what devices, what platforms, et cetera, et cetera. That's what kids need today. And mom and dad need to take it real serious, because guess what? If you don't have a clear policy, then guess what? You actually have a policy, and it is entrust your kids to the internet. And I think you love your kids more than to just entrust them to that. So get your pen and get your paper and write this down, and your kids will appreciate the clarity.
You know, as a parent myself, I found that it was very important to implement structure for my wife and I and for our family, for our kids, and just to really show where the boundaries were, right? To play within those boundaries. Now, Conor, you write about something you call key family process, KFP for parents. What is it exactly, and why is it so important?
Yeah, so in a business, you have key processes, and I believe that it's important for a business to write down what are the key processes to make my business work. Maybe it's what's my marketing process to capture a new email? How do I take care of the accounting process? How do I do customer service? How do I ship a product out to you at your house? There's key processes, business processes. Well, so I took that same idea and applied it to family. So, what are the processes in a family life? Well, it might be like getting the dishes done. It might be getting the laundry done. It might be the family budget, making sure that you're paying down debt at a certain rate. It might be the homework, like getting a certain GPA with your kids. Make sure they get good grades. It might be yard work. So there are certain key family processes which deserve to be documented so that the responsible party knows exactly what they're expected to do, when they're expected to do it, how they're expected to do it. Something as simple as a chore chart. Like in my house, man, getting the dishes and the laundry done, it's hard. It's hard. There's just so much. It's like a nuclear bomb goes off in my house every day and you have to clean. And so that's a major part of our house. So documenting precisely what the expectations are. And I think it's good to have a master list of all the different processes that mom and dad kind of want to oversee. Otherwise, conflict erupts because the expectations aren't precisely clear.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Conor. Let's chit-chat a bit about conflict here. It's inevitable in any family. How can parents resolve conflict while acknowledging and understanding both their own feelings and the feelings of others?
I think the way to handle most conflict, Hal, is recognizing the person that God put into your family versus the person you wish was in your family. And so in business, we've really learned in business, corporate America over the last 30 years has really learned the value of assessment tests. We take a lot of assessment tests to see what is this person's strengths and weaknesses and to build on their strengths rather than trying to fix all their weaknesses. That's what they used to do way back when. Now we've learned that, hey, find out what this girl or guy's good at and build on that. And can you put them in a position to where they thrive? And then you're not fighting an uphill battle all the time. And there's all kinds of assessments and they're fun. People love taking them. So I've shown in my book a number of assessment tests that you can use for your family. And when you do those, the person that God made naturally is coming out at you. It's one of the things I've learned. Even this 3-week-old baby, Hal, I'm already seeing a personality take shape. I didn't create that personality through the environment. This is written into her DNA. And so it's just there, put there by God. So when you do these assessment tests and really continually focus on what the natural temperament and personality of this kid is, it cuts down on the fighting and the bickering and the resentment, because you see they're wired this way. Now, what do I do about that? How do I handle it? How do I communicate to them? That's where, you have to start fleshing that out. But one size does not fit all. And when you appreciate the differences of each personality in your family, a lot of the stress goes away.
And you believe that it's key for families to learn how to really solve problems together. Why is that so important? How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, just like you do it in a business, I mean, the CEO does not go off into his office with his pad of paper and figure out everything. No, he brings in the team to kind of work through problems. So we have a number of decision-making tools and problem-solving tools that we've put into this book for families to use. So if it's something as simple like my wife and I were trying to figure out what kind of goat to buy recently. We bought pregnant goats. We had a bunch of goats. We needed to buy some pregnant goats so the kids could watch the miracle of birth and sell the little baby goats. So it's a funny little thing, but we were trying to decide between 3 or 4 options. So I pulled out one of my tools and we used the tool, and the kids sat there and helped us figure out which pregnant goat did we want to buy. And it sounds like a goofy situation, but if you have to buy a car, it can be very stressful. If you have to do an addition to your house or renovate something, very stressful. I have tools there where the whole family can contribute to analyzing the situation. What's the financial impact, the emotional impact? How do you quantify the psychological components of this? How do you quantify the time needed to work on these things? You start getting the kids, and you'd be surprised how young they can contribute. Even a 6, 7, 8-year-old can really contribute to these things because they have a sense of mom and dad's stress level that sometimes we don't even have. So when you put these things on paper and use my decision-making tools and problem-solving tools, it really kind of helps the team work together to solve the problem, as opposed to mom and dad just doing it on their own.
Conor Gallagher is the father of 16 children, that's right, 16 kids, and author of Well-Ordered Family, which is available at wellorderedfamily.com. Conor, thanks so much for joining us today from Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was a pleasure. I'm humbled to be here. Thanks so much.